The bounty hunters. All right then. The ones we've got descending on the abandoned city of Old Wyke are running off of basic search and rescue programming. While that test is happening, it's now your show, little buddy. Show us the magic, Dong says as he glances from his station that shows all the different drones and towards Scaly, who's piloting one specific drone. The graphics on everything have been downgraded to the level that the readouts look like screenshots from an early 3D game. It made depth perception a nightmare and a half, gave it all a cartoony feel, and was a lot less depressing than the slowly decaying city. The buildings were maintained by the infused markings on them, but the buildup of dust and debris was clear. Nature was fighting to take the lands back, and the battle was slow but one-sided. All right, we are entering the largy tower with the drone, Scaly says into a microphone, and it echoes through the ship. Be on the lookout for strange axiom effects, and if anything weird starts happening, let me know immediately. There, is that good enough? Or are there more lectures about safety protocol coming my way? Kid, these may be annoying, but they really are here to help you. It just takes one moment of incaution and everything can end, Dong says. I know. God, I know, Scaly says, tapping his synthetic fingers in remembrance. If he and his mother had been a little faster, a little more attentive. You all right? Dong asks, and Scaly retreats behind his hair a little. These are good people, and they've been very, very good to him. But that's something private, something that has nothing to do with them, and I'm fine. If you say so, Dong says before looking back to his own screens. Empty city here. Empty corridor for me, Scaly says as he sees the flat panels from his screen. It looked really stupid to him, like something a very basic kids show would use as its visuals. A really, really basic kids show. A cheap one. Movement, Scaly says in a somewhat bored tone. Where? Dong asks. There, see? He asks as he moves the drone forward to the first major junction and drops its first relay beacon. Ha, Dong says after a moment before turning away, and Scaly smirks. This is serious, kid. I know, it's just... Look at the screen, it's so stupid looking. I expect some stupid mascot to show up and start telling me about numbers next, Scaly complains. That's the point, this thing. Attacks the mind. I know it's just so weird though. It's really weird, Scaly protests, and Dong sighs. I know, kid. I know. Sometimes you have to do the stupid sounding orders though. You never know if they're going to be useful or not, Dong says, and Scaly sighs as he nods. It's not even stupid, it just looks so stupid I can't get past it. I could put together better graphics than that in a flight simulator, and I hate programming, Scaly protests, gesturing to the screen. Ah, that makes a lot more sense. Just grin and bear it, kiddo. Remember, it may look stupid, but imagine how stupid Target Actual will feel if they ever learned we use such a basic graphics setting to beat them. Dong advises, and Scaly can't help but snort in amusement. Like being knocked out with a foam bat, he says with a chuckle. There you go. It's suddenly a lot more entertaining, isn't it? Dong asks, and Scaly lets out a chuckle as he turns back to his screen fully. All right, I've reached some kind of... Holy shit, Dong says, and Scaly turns away to look at Dong's screen. What? What do you see? Scaly asks. It's gone now, but there was something that looked like a mound of bodies before it pulled away, Dong says before pointing to part of the screen. Drone IR-45. That's what spotted it. Really, that's... Scaly begins, but Dong points past him to the screen he's no longer looking at. He turns and sees some... thing. A bald, bulbous mound with empty sockets where eyes should be. A lipless mouth full of sharp teeth and a long neck. All pale gray and stretching out of sight, leaving a long neck in view of the drone. Scaly backs the drone out of the stairwell somewhat and just watches as the neck thickens and thickens before suddenly having random limbs around it with no rhyme or reason, reaching and grasping at the edges of things to pull itself up. Well, that's a bet I lost. I thought the shape was a camera on a stick. You fuckers bet on everything, Scaly chides Dong. A mobile mound of corpses for me, some slug-like neck stretched abomination for you. What's the connection? Dong asks. I don't know, Scaly says as he watches the thing leave the screen. It had to at least be 20 meters long and ended up as thick as an air car near the end. Get your drone down there. See if you can't take a look at its lair. Dong orders and Scaly nods before deploying another relay and angling the drone down the way the thing came from. Scaly suddenly lets out a chuckle and Dong gives him an odd look. It just sort of hit me that as weird as all this is for us, it's going to be freaky as hell for your buddies on Centris. They're getting the full definition view of whatever the hell's going on. Scaly notes as the drone drops down at his direction until it reaches the bottom. He turns it around and sees a path well worn by grease and whatever bodily oils the thing above used. He finds a corner covered in dust and drops another relay there before flying down the hallway. The question is, what is it? It doesn't match up with any known species. Sure, there are a couple with really long necks, but they usually have long hair, eyes, and noses, simple things. If that thing had any hair on its body, there was nothing the drone could pick up, Scaly says before suddenly getting a proximity alert from the rear sensors of the drone. He moves it upwards and well away from the floor. An angling downward of the camera shows the thing moving past underneath. Its movement is swaying back and forth in a mindless cadence as it goes. Scaly looks to Dong and his eyes widen. Dude! Dong whirls around at Scaly's point and sees the mound of corpses again. The same pale gray as the thing on Scaly's screen, and now revealed to be a pile of corpses in a semi-transparent gray sack. Then the long neck and head is revealed. It's the same creature. The fuck are we dealing with? Scaly asks. I think these may be the sources of the field. Living axiom totems. We need to wait for information from the Dauntless. The field is too dangerous to study while inside it. So let's just get as many money shots of these horrors as possible and see what the nerds make of them. Right. Good idea, Scaly says as he drops the drone out of its hiding place as the creature passes by underneath and pursues. Any playfulness or boredom is gone, and the kid is laser-focused. He absently brushes the hair out of his face and reveals the brutal scar around his eye and the cybernetic implant that replaces it. Hello there. We seem to have more than one in the abandoned city. Dong notes. Can't look. Busy, Scaly says as he steers the drone and switches things into a grid-based configuration for the visual as the night vision takes over. The thing is somehow more disturbing for even less detail, as if it were some kind of glitch in the code or virus with life. The random nature of the limbs around its main body and just how thin yet stiff the neck is, even more off-putting without any detail beyond basic shape. There seems to be one of these things in every main district of the city, but why are the ones on my screen bloated with corpses and yours is comparatively skinny as a rail? Dong asks, and Scaly gets a cold sensation as he considers the implications. They're cannibals. They have to be. They're feasting on the dead. They digest slow, but they are eating the dead. And the one I'm watching is surrounded by the living. Weird axiom effects or not, it's probably helpless in a fight. Scavengers? Scaly asks in a semi-horrified, semi-fascinated tone. That's where the smart money seems to be. The ones I've got in Old Wyke are bloated from the people that ran, but yours doesn't want to pick a fight, so it's not going after the others killed by the field. You think they might be evolving? Some new kind of creature that hunts with wide-range axiom effects? Scaly asks, as he watches his curl up on itself and seemingly goes to sleep. No. These things have some kind of guiding intelligence, Otherwise, they wouldn't be targeting people or things that say certain words. These creatures are not natural, not the main threat either, but they are a major piece of the puzzle. These are Target Actual's weapons. This is why she emptied out entire cities. This is how she's completely taken over the world. But why? Scaly asks. Who can say? We need to get closer to Target Actual and maybe information directly from her in order to get an answer like that, Dong says before pulling out his communicator. Please tell me you all have been paying attention to this. We have. We didn't want to distract you though, so we've all but barricaded your room to keep you from being disturbed, Pukey responds. Anyways, I'm all but duct taped to my hospital bed at the moment, but I want you guys to try and get a scraping of the thing's trails or a scan of them chemically. The scraping will be easier. We need a sample of these things to minimize the surprises they have in store. I don't want to chlorinate one just to find out that it finds the smell pleasant. Good point. Something this nasty looking, I wouldn't put it past it. Dong notes. What did I tell you about non-strenuous activities? Planning a planetary liberation is strenuous. Cindy's voice can be heard over the communicator as the line goes dead. Scaly suppresses a snort of amusement. A moment of silence for our brave, soon-to-be former captain who pissed off his wife and doctor, Dong says solemnly, and Scaly smacks him on the arm while snickering. Alas, we hardly knew ye. Bullshit. Scaly returns and Dong snorts. Hang on, these ones are all coming together, Dong says as he sees the feed from multiple drones follow the movement of the creatures into a single central building. Hey, that kind of matches the outlines I'm seeing here. I think you may have found their lair, Scaly says, and Dong leans over to observe. Nests in the rubble. There is a mind behind these things, but it clearly doesn't care that its tools live in squalor, Dong notes. Still, this answers a lot of questions. I thought I saw a pattern in all the emptied towns and cities. They're all at a good distance to keep the field up without too much overlap. So, the question is, are they that far apart because whoever made these things doesn't want too many, or is it because they'll fight or something? Scaly asks. Not sure if they'll fight each other. These three seem to be fairly blasé about having each other around, Dong notes. Still, that's not a bad train of thought. There could be interactions between these creatures that might be useful, a balance of power we can play with. That's something to think about. A battle royal between abominations against God and nature, Scaly says somberly. I've seen uglier, Dong dismisses. With what? Your mother. Oh, fuck you, dude. Scaly adds a solid punch to Dong as part of his rebuttal. In an instant, Dong has him in a headlock and is grinding his knuckles into the top of his head as Scaly's augmented fingers start grabbing at his face. Hey, do we have to come in there? Mr. T demands with a thump on the door. They straighten up in a moment. No! They chime at once before looking at each other and snorting in laughter. Scaly holds up a fist and gets a bump from Dong. Still, they are ugly motherfuckers, aren't they? Dong notes after a bit. Incest will do that to ya. Scaly snaps back and Dong snorts. Oh, ew! Now I'm thinking about it. You're the one that brought it up, Scaly protests. I meant it as a general insult, not a literal accusation. Well, fuck you, man, it's out and there's no taking that mental image back. Blue. Ugh, you're awful, Dong exclaims as he fights back a laugh. The cartoonish pictures or wireframes of the abominations lends well to the laughter. But there's an air of forced levity. The things on their screens have a sickly, disturbing nature to them. And no doubt seeing them without a cartoonish filter would be a very different story.